Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, I'll be making my case for why I feel like the 2024 team can and will be better than the 2022 team. And for those of y'all that just don't know or may have forgot, our 2022 team was on the verge of making the college football playoffs with only 4 teams. We're also on the brink of having the University of Tennessee's first Heisman Trophy winner. And as always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Huge shout out, as always, to the members of this channel. If you would like to help support us and keep us growing, you can do so by clicking the join button just below this video. You will get exclusive content that we cannot share on the normal side of YouTube, with film breakdowns of individual players on our team, and also obviously film of the entire team as a whole versus our opponents, everything in between. And if you would like to donate to this channel, you can do so by scanning the Cash App QR code in the top right-hand corner with your smartphone. If you're watching from your smartphone, that link will be down in the description below, right next to donate. And before we get straight into the video, I want to bring up a couple of things. Number one, in yesterday's video, we were talking about a few players that we felt like could potentially be visiting our Volunteers. I think that we hit the nail on the head outside of Onus Konabani. So Steve Wilfong from On3 has come out and said that Onus Konabani is expected to be visiting our Volunteers at some point this week once the dead period ends. So that's huge. Hopefully he will be another commit once he gets done with his visit. But he's also come out along with Chad Simmons and put an RPM for the Sombrame to flip to our Volunteers. So that's really big news. And last thing that I want to bring up before we get into the actual video is take a look at this clip right here of our Volunteers on picture day. And they're just talking about their number changes, all that type of stuff. But Squirrel White looks really good. Changed his number to number 3. I think that he is going to be physically ready to come out and compete. Right here we have Andre Turntine. A lot of folks think that he might be the starting safety. He's obviously gained a lot of weight. And here we have Brew McCoy at 230 pounds, and he's carrying it like a dream. I mean, that's about as good as 230 is going to look on anybody, but definitely expecting for him to come back and have a huge season, whether he's wearing number 15 or number 5. If he's more comfortable in number 5, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm very excited to see it. Now, right here, we have Chaz Nimrod, who's listed at 6'3", 220 pounds. And you can tell that he's about that size, okay? P actually sent this to me earlier, and he was saying, hey, does Chaz Nimrod look like he's 220 to you? And I said, yeah, because he's at least Brew McCoy's height, if not taller. And I just thank y'all that this daggone wide receiver room is going to be unbelievable. We have a whole lot of people that can get it done for us. So excited about that. But let's go ahead and talk about the 2022 team compared to the 2024 team. In the first statistical category that we'll be looking at today will be the passing numbers for the offense and defense. Y'all can see, starting off with the offense, that we attempted about 32.5 passes per game, completing 22.3 of those, which is good for about 69%, and that's phenomenal. Now, the biggest question will be, can we replicate that in 2024? I think that there's a few reasons as to why we can. Number one, the offensive line is going to be much improved compared to 2022. Cooper Mays returns at center, and so does Javonte Spraggins at right guard. That's 2 veterans that should be, obviously, they should have a whole lot more experience, but they're also going to be bigger, faster, stronger, all of that, and that's going to help us out a ton, because whenever you look at the games where we really struggled to be able to protect our quarterback, it typically came from pressure up the middle. And now I think that the middle will be a lot more solid than it was in 2022. But also, talking about a guy like Lance Hurd coming in at left tackle, I think that he will be an upgrade over Gerald Mincy. We might kind of, make a push, or maybe you take a little bit of a step back as far as the right tackle goes. But I think that, whenever you look at this offensive line from left tackle to right tackle, we're good. Left guard, whole lot more depth there. And I could echo those same sentiments for the entire line. There's a lot of veteran depth, and it's not going to be like it was in 2022 or even in 2023 when one player goes down and all of a sudden maybe the whole season's done. Again, man, it's all about having that depth, those veterans that understand what to expect with pretty much the exact same schedule. We're going to be going to the same, road environments. So, some of these veterans will be able to talk to some of the newcomers or whoever and say, look, this is what to expect, especially whenever you talk about, from a schematical perspective. I think that we're going to be just fine right there up front. So that's the biggest reason that I think that, our passing will look better in 2024 compared to 2022. And for those of y'all just wondering, how did the sacks look back in 2022? Well, we gave up 27 sacks that season, which was good for 65th in the country. In 2023, we only gave up 24 sacks, which was good for 60th in the season. I think that that trend will continue. We might be able to give up less sacks this year, but the ultimate X factor is going to be with Nico Iamaleava. How will he compare to a Hendon Hooker? Y'all can see Hendo Cinco's numbers from 2022, extremely efficient, over 3,100 yards passing, 27 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. That's insane. Do I think that Nico can replicate that? I would say this. I feel like he's probably going to get more yards passing on the entire season just because Hendo only played 10 and a half games, really. So I do think that Nico will be able to exceed that, probably going to be getting more touchdowns, but he could also give up more interceptions just because this is his first year starting in the SEC. There will be a little bit of a learning curve for him. I don't think it's going to be as steep as most people's will be, but let's scroll on down here to Hendon Hooker's rushing numbers, and I think that Nico will exceed this. You can see 430 yards with 5 touchdowns. I definitely think he's going to do better than that. The reason for it is Nico is a more, mobile player. He's a better runner with the football in his hands than Hendon Hooker was. Now, Hendon Hooker has really good straight line speed, but I don't see him really making people miss. I feel like Nico will make people miss in a game time situation. Now, the other question for me is going to be, how is the coaching staff going to take to Nico running the ball a little bit more? I've seen him doing it a lot, especially whenever players break down. He's just going to go ahead and make something happen. I think that Coach Heupel gets it. You have to let these guys play and, let them kind of do what they do. I feel like he will allow Nico to run if plays break down. So I could see him getting more yardage right here rushing than Hendon Hooker did. Now for the passing numbers on defense, we saw about 41 pass attempts per game back in 22, and we only allowed 25.6 of those to be completed, which is good for about a 63% completion percentage. I think that that's great considering the talent that we had to work with in 2022. Now, we also gave up 289.5 yards per game and 1.6 touchdowns per game. I think that we're going to do a lot better than that this season just because the talent from top to bottom is significantly better than it was in 2022. And it all starts up front, okay? We're going to start off right there because we know that this pass rush is going to be phenomenal. For a point of reference, back in 2022, we had 31 sacks. 23 of those came from the defensive line. And back in 2023, we had 40 and a half sacks. 32.7 of those came from our defensive line. So we had more sacks just from our defensive line in 2023 than we did in the entire 2022 season. I think that things will continue to trend in that direction in 2024 because the defensive front is going to be better this year than it was in 2023. Now, we do understand that Coach Banks likes to bring exotic blitzes. He might be the best at dialing up those blitzes, in the, most critical situations, like on the third downs, whatever. But, not just about the blitzes, but the way that the coverage looks behind it. I think that he's one of the best in the entire country at that. So now we're not just talking about our front being able to get to the passer, but also if you think about we're a lot more athletic at the linebacker position, they should be able to get home a lot more frequently than we did back in 22 or in 23. But also we've got some great secondary pieces. Coach Banks ain't scared to bring it from the corners or from the safeties now. So you got to keep that in mind as well. But also, whenever you talk about how the passing defense looked back in 2022, my biggest concern was always about our linebackers. It just seemed like if it was a third down, fourth down, whenever the opposing offense needed to convert, they attacked our linebacking core. They won't be able to do it, as frequently this season because our linebackers are so much more athletic. I think that this is going to be for sure the best pass coverage unit as far as that room goes that Coach Heupel maybe has ever seen as a head coach. So that's huge. But also, I think that our cornerbacks on both sides, the starters, Ricky Gibson and Jamar McCoy, are just going to be shut down, lockdown guys. It doesn't matter if it's man-to-man or if it's zone. So that helps out tremendously. But whenever you talk about those safeties, can they be better than we were in 2022? They're definitely going to be more athletic, but can they be better on the field? I don't know. It really all depends on how much are they willing to dedicate themselves to the film room. It just feels like their personalities will be the types that are going to be always watching film, always trying to get better, off the field and on the field. But that's huge, especially playing at safety. But I think that if you just talk about our front seven, there's absolutely no question that our passing unit will get a lot better. Let's take a look at some of the differentials. So we were plus 6.1 with percentage. We were plus 36.6 with yards, and we were plus 1.3 with touchdowns. So I do, again, feel like that's going to get a lot better in 2024. Now for the rushing numbers in 2022 on offense and defense, starting off with the offense, we had about 40 attempts per game, good for 200 yards per game, 5 yards per attempt. All that looks phenomenal, and 3.1 touchdowns per game. So can we replicate that in 2024? Again, back to the fronts, I think that we should have more opportunities to kind of replicate this. But whenever you look at the running back room, I would say maybe not as much talent. It might be about the same amount of experience, but maybe it's not as much talent as we had back in 2022. That's just yet to be seen because there's so many new faces inside of this room. I do think that, by midway through the season, everyone's going to be hitting their stride. We don't know, will we only rotate 3 running backs like we did up under Coach Mack, or, with Coach Sims, will we rotate more or less? But let's go ahead and pull up those numbers from 2022, and you can see that Jabari Small had 157 attempts, only 734 yards, but good for 4.7 yards per attempt. And then Jalen Wright was right there behind him with 146 attempts, good for 875 yards, 6 yards per attempt. And then Hendon Hooker was number 3. We already talked about. Probably Nico will be somewhere in that same ballpark, but then Dylan Sampson only had 58 attempts, good for about 400 yards, 6.8 yards per attempt. So when you look at things that way, it doesn't seem too out of reach that we've got some guys that can come in and do that. Dylan Sampson obviously has been around for a long time. I'm expecting a huge season out of him. But when is Cam Seldon going to be healthy? Once he comes back, is he going to be able to, turn his pads over once he's, kind of running through that box and then be able to break it to the outside and hit those home runs for us? What about Peyton Lewis? What about Deshaun Bishop, Khalifa Keith? Maybe you could actually make the argument that that room is more talented from a depth perspective from top to bottom. But again, it's just yet to be seen. So I would put that right there as a push as far as the rushing numbers in 2024. Now, on to the defensive numbers. If there's anything that we know about Coach Banks, his defenses will stop the run. That's something that we've gotten better at every single year, but we've always been really good at it. So take a look at these numbers. Only giving up 115.8 yards per game, which is definitely going to be high held back in 2022, but it improved in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. And we're holding teams to 3.3 yards per carry, and we only allowed 1.2 touchdowns per game. And looking at the differentials, we were plus 83.7 on yards per game, plus 1.7 on the average per game, and plus 1.9 on the touchdowns per game. So again, starting off up front, we talk a lot about how good the pass rush should be and more than likely will be, but we've got guys that take a lot of pride in stopping that run first, especially on the interior. Way more depth than we had back in 2022. So, just with that alone, I think that we're going to improve. But also on the outside, I think that James Pierce takes a big step forward. He's improved in run support every single season. If you look kind of towards the end of the year, I mean, his run support just stepped up so much. I think we were kind of talking about that halfway through the season. That, hey, look, he's got to do a little bit better here, setting these edges, getting off blocks. But hopefully he will continue to do that. But on the strong side, I mean, dude, listen, we're so deep there with guys that can stop that run on a very, very high level, whether it's on the edge or if they kind of bump back to the inside on a Rabbits package. It just doesn't matter. I think that the upside of several players there is just way better than we've had in last season or back in 2022. So I feel good just up front. But again, taking a step back, on that second level, I think that just being a lot more athletic, having a veteran out there like a Keenan Pili who's played so much football at 25 years old, grown man strength, I mean, on all 3 levels with this football team, offense, defense, special teams, you would expect that they're going to be able to, at the point of contact, be able to disengage quickly. But I mean, again, Keenan Pili being a guy that's a veteran that will understand what he's looking at, understands how to prepare for these games, should be able to teach this younger linebacker core, what they need to be looking for and help to get them lined up and be able to watch out for plays in the right spot. I also love the simple fact that Coach Inge is a teacher. I mean, that's one of the first things that I noticed about him. Not much of a yeller and all that. He's got a, different sort of a personality, which again, just kind of goes back to the teaching. A lot of times the best teachers are the ones that you can think, oh, they were doing all this goofy stuff, but it helps you to retain that information. And that's a huge deal, just because on a week-to-week basis, if you can understand why you're doing what you're doing, which is something that Coach Inge is huge on. If you understand the why, then if you see something that maybe you didn't go over in film session or in practice, you understand what you're supposed to be doing because you get the why. So I think that we will look a lot better in run support, but also, not to go back too far, but also in pass coverage, just because, I mean, if you look back again to the linebackers last season, for the last couple of seasons, those guys a lot of times were just out of sorts. Like they were out of position. They just look confused. Maybe they were a step too slow sometimes. But if you take that into account on top of, not really knowing what the heck is going on, especially versus Florida, teams like that, Mizzou, we just looked like we were not in the right positions. We won't see that as much this season. And that's a big part of the reason I do think that we will take big leaps forward as far as run support goes. But you got to talk about that third level because the star position, they've got to step up and help us out. They've done a good job. I would say that maybe they've helped us out more than any other position, on this entire team, just in being consistent in run support. But the safety should be a lot more willing to come up and tackle. I can promise you, Kobe Thomas is going to do it. If John Slaughter starts, he's going to do it. He's going to come up. He's going to fill. How much does that kind of hurt our passing game? I mean, maybe it could some on play action, but just all in all, y'all, I think that we're going to be fine from top to bottom. We've got guys that are willing to come downhill and fill, and we have not always had that. Also, I feel like Andre Turrentine, especially towards the end of last season, showed that he's willing and able to come up and help us out in run support as well. So I think that we're going to be just fine as far as run support goes. Again, the defense, I'm thinking, should, or could end up being like top 10, and the offense could end up being top 3. How do you not make it to the playoffs with a team like that? And finally, for the team totals on offense and defense back in 2022, starting off with the plays per game, the offense ran about 73 plays per game, whereas the defense was on the field for about 76 plays per game, which is good for a differential of negative 3.5. So the defense was on the field on average 3.5 more plays than the offense was, and that's not how you want for your team to be run. But there are several factors that you could kind of look at from 2022. Number one, our offense was very efficient, so they were scoring. We're scoring very quickly. That could be a part of the reason that the defense was on the field a little bit more, but at the same time, we ran with more tempo than we did back in 2023. Just for a point of reference, in 23, our offense ran about 69.2 plays per game, and our defense was on the field for about 67.5 plays per game, which I feel like it's going to be a lot closer to that. You want it to be as even as possible, but you would prefer for your offense to be on the field longer than your defense, as long as you're being productive and you're scoring. I think that that can and will happen this season, but who knows? I also kind of feel like us running at such a breakneck speed might not be the best idea to do all the time. Sometimes you definitely need to try to run that clock out. So I'm anticipating, especially with the headsets this year, that we will be able to kind of slow things down a little bit more whenever we need to on offense and give our defense a break. But again, the defense is a lot deeper than it has ever been up under Coach Heupel. So we should be fine right there. Now on to the yards per game. The offense had about 525.5 yards per game, whereas the defense gave up about 405.3 yards per game for a differential of plus 120.2. I think that that's outstanding, but it's only going to be getting better in 2024. All right. So y'all just get prepared for that. For all the reasons that we've already named off, I feel like it will be getting a lot better. I just feel like the offense should be able to dictate the pace of the game and, how it's played. And then at the same time, the defense should be able to get off the field with a great pass rush, excellent at run stopping, all that good stuff. A lot more athletic, a whole lot of veterans, everything. So on to the average yards per play. On offense, we saw 7.2. On defense, we gave up 5.3 for a differential of plus 1.9. I could also see that getting better. Obviously, that's going to correlate to the yards per game. Now onto the touchdowns per game. This is crazy. The offense was scoring 6 touchdowns per game in 2022. The defense only gave up 2.8, which is good for a touchdown differential of plus 3.2. I think that it could be very similar to that this year, but I mean, that's almost unheard of for it to, last throughout the entire season. If it does, though, I feel very, very good about our chances to not only go into the playoffs, but win the whole doggone thing. Now on to the penalties per game. This is a place that we most definitely have to improve from 2022. And the offense gave up 8.1 penalties, where the defense gave up 8.5. So the defense was penalized a little bit more than the offense. Again, I think with so many veterans up front, because most of the penalties was with false starts, I think that we'll find a way to get that corrected, especially on the road. We have to do that if we want to, help Coach Heupel get over that hump of being able to win games on the road, especially the ones that we should. So I think that that will improve. Also, whenever you're talking about defense, a whole lot of times whenever you're not as athletic out in space, you got to kind of hold or, whatever it is, or you're face masking people. But whenever you have more athletes, you can get your body into the right spot to not have to do all those things. So I definitely think that we will improve in that aspect. And last, we'll be talking about the turnovers. So the offense only gave up 0.8 turnovers per game in 2022. And 0.2 of that was from interceptions. 0.6 of that was from fumbles. I think that there's a slight chance that we could go up a little bit in the interceptions. With Nico's first year as a starter in this league, I could definitely see that happening. But I would think that as far as fumbles go, the ball security should be great. I've seen that be a point of emphasis with the wide receivers, with the running backs. So I think that we'll be a little bit better there. And then also at the same time, maybe Nico, if he feels like maybe have to force us into coverage, maybe he decides to make a play with his legs. That should also help us out with, not throwing as many interceptions. So I could see us being close to this in 2024, but I could also see us going up just a taste. Now, whenever you talk about the defense, they had 1.6 turnovers per game, which is huge. I think that this is going to go up because, again, that pass rush is going to be crazy. The less time that you have to throw the football, the more likelihood there is that you will be throwing it into some errant places, especially considering that in certain down and distances, things like that, we should be able to sit on different routes. And I think that we've got some great athletes in the secondary that will capitalize off of those situations, make those catches. I mean, listen, guys, Jamal McCoy is a former wide receiver. I think he was like a 3 or 4 star. He might have been a 4-star wide receiver coming out of high school. So he's got some really good hands. Would not be surprised to see him get some. All of our guys, they're going to be good. But talking about those linebackers trying to throw the ball over the middle, think that they're going to take that big bump forward in pass coverage. Would not be surprised to see them get more interceptions than Coach Heupel has seen from a linebacking core up in Knoxville. And maybe since he's been a coach, just because those guys are ballers, they're going to understand what to do and where to be. And they will have the athleticism to make the plays whenever the opportunities are given to them. So I feel good about that, right? You see that the turnover differential was a negative 0.8, and I don't know why it's a negative. It probably should be a plus 0.8 because we have more turnovers, or we have more turnovers on defense than we did on offense back in 2022. I definitely expect for that trend to continue in 2024. So overall, y'all, from top to bottom, I definitely feel like our team in 24 will pretty much just pick up where the 2022 team left off at. And we have a really good shot to maybe break a whole lot of those records, or at least some of them moving forward. We'll see how everyone buys in, as fall camp gets underway. We only have 9 days until they get started, so very excited about that. But y'all let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. As always, thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer friends. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.